Welcome, everybody. My name is Haresh Singhani. This is Conversations with Haresh. We'll be talking to people of varied backgrounds, covering various topics. I'm very excited to be able to share these with you. The goal is to increase curiosity and empathy amongst all of us to help us grow professionally and personally at all levels. And of course, we also want to make sure that this is fun. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to having you.
Say a bit about Hitech Advisors, and then I'll take it back.
You take it back? Okay.
The mic.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ruchi. Thank you for being here. It's been, I would say, so many events now at this venue, and I think I have been enjoying this, meeting some familiar faces and some new faces every time we are in this room with interesting topics. And I know you're going to witness one today with incredible panelists as well. And Haresh asked me only to talk about Hitech Advisors, so let's get back to that. Some of you might already know, but for those you don't, we are a consulting company here in Kirkland. And we work with our clients directly in terms of what their needs are, and we meet them where their needs are. We like to say we are experts at providing experts for our clients, and we map meaningful problems with people who find them meaningful to solve. And that could be in any domain. We can help build software for the clients. We can help solve their hard TA problems wherever they are struggling with. We can help them with implementing IT services. We are doing those for some of our clients as well. We can also help the clients in terms of where they are in the journey in terms of product development, and if there is any anything that they are struggling with or they need extra hands, whether it's with product road mapping or design or even operations. So we have been working with the clients mostly in greater Seattle area, but we do have clients outside. Like we have some clients in Bay, and some of the clients here have expanded globally. So we have now global presence as well. We have teams globally too. Vitali is here, and he is acknowledging because that's one of his teams. So some of the clients that we are working now are like Qualtrics, Nintendo, Gates Foundation, Costco, so mid-sized to larger companies, I would say. And we also work with a lot of stealth startups. We are able to help them a lot because at the needs, we can meet them with their needs in terms of their teams are smaller and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So we work with a lot of startups in the area too. Many a times the clients come up to us with like the problems they're looking to solve, and we brainstorm with the team as to how to solve those. We work with our consultants. Sometimes the problems are tricky or unique in the nature, and we ourselves are not sure whether we can do it. And then when we brainstorm and sit with some of our consultants in the room that I can even see here, it's like, okay, we can do it, and then we deliver it for them. So that surprises us, but that also motivates us at the same time. So thank you for being here. If you would like to learn more about us, reach out to me. Haresh, Taryn is here, and we'll be happy to chat more. Thanks, Haresh.
Thank you. All right, so that's a little bit about Hitech Advisors. The most interesting part of the evening is probably drinks and food, right? So for that, we have to thank JP Morgan Private Bank, right? And so David's going to introduce us to the bank. I think many of you have probably heard of it, but at least JP Morgan.
Thanks, Rash. I won't be too long. David Kurtman, work at JP Morgan Private Bank. Specifically what I do for our clients, I run our founders and funders vertical, so covering founders of kind of disruptive tech companies, kind of hyper growth type companies, covering the founders and CEOs. And we also cover the venture industry, so we bank funds and we bank GPs at those funds. So that's kind of what I do for the private bank here. Obviously, JP Morgan is an enormous bank. We do a lot for the innovation economy is what we call it. So anything from startup banking all the way to IPOing and going public. So we cover the whole space of kind of a growth of a company. Really committed to this area and kind of being a resource for founders for their company. Obviously if founder doesn't have much liquidity, so I don't really come into the picture until we find an exit for them. So it's more advice around how to structure their personal wealth, advice how to have trust, advice to inform people about QSBS, how to use it, the best way to structure it. So it's really kind of advice throughout the life cycle for the individual, because founders, they're so focused on their company and they don't think about, oh, hey, I'm about to get bought for $200 million and I put nothing in trust to qualify for my QSBS $10 million tax break. What do I do? And it's too late. So we tried to kind of help with the personal side of things as they're focusing on their company. And I think as a firm, we really just want to be a huge resource for the whole innovation tech economy, because we can, obviously we're large in scale, but we can help small businesses and early startups as well. And then, Haresh, we've been doing this for almost 2 years now. And it's the most informative panel discussion events and topics that I think out there. And, it's a small crowd, everyone's super interactive. And it's wonderful seeing, more and more faces that I recognize here. So, Haresh, thank you for letting me be involved, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you, David. So, without further ado, as far as, suspenseful panelists, I'll invite Kelly and Min and Leo to come by, take a seat. Anywhere. Hopefully they're all working. So we'll keep it pretty free-flowing. I think some of you have probably read the bios of the panelists that we have today. So we'll start with brief intros, and I'm just going to go in a simple order, starting with Min. Min is a very renowned scholar, I guess, of education in many forms, but she's also on the faculty at the College of Education at my favorite university, University of Washington. I have 3 Cougars in the family, so I'm getting it because of the Apple Cup thing this week. But so Min, I know you're involved in many things, AI and beyond, with regards to education. So would you like to share a bit about what you're doing right now and your journey?
Yeah, of course. Can you all hear me okay?
To the bottom. Red light's on, it's on.
How about this? Better? Oh, thank you. So Min Sun, I am a Rose Family Term Professorship at UW, and so I directed Amplify Learn.ai Center, which is we're trying to leverage generative AI for amplifying both the equity and quality of K-12 education. And underneath of that, our team developed Colleague AI, which is a specialized AI tool for teachers. We do many things, I should say Colleague AI do many things for teachers, ranging from lesson planning, assist them with lesson planning, to inclusive practice, like how to specialize lesson material, classroom instructional opportunities or learning opportunities for students. We also do like a standard-based rubric generation, grading, all sorts of things, trying to help teachers figure out in education, quote unquote, the famous 21-hour problem. Basically say that like teachers, we all know like K-12 teachers are overworked. They work more than 40 hours per week, right? And nowadays when we have a Colleague AI, open it up to all teachers nationwide, we notice that teachers utilize the platform most often actually during the weekends, because they were doing planning, they were thinking about what their students need, right? So they're doing a lot of like work, most likely like either behind the desk or away from their students. We don't oftentimes recognize they're doing this work, right? So we're thinking about how do we help teachers best allocate, optimize their time allocation in a way that they can focus more on what they really passionate about, actually be in front of students, interacting with them. So we're helping with individual lesson planning, grading, offering them feedback, and we're also developing a student-facing version as well. So that's kind of a brief role I have with both the startup company, Colleague AI, as well as with UW.
Thank you. And next we have Leo, who is also at the university, but he's also at multiple universities from what I understand, right? And one of the focus areas is how to make educators of higher education AI aware and leverage AI. So go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm so delighted to be with all of you tonight. I'm Léonard Boussioux. You can call me Leo. I just joined a year and a half ago at the University of Washington, and I'm so delighted to now be connected with the Seattle ecosystem. So I did my PhD at MIT, and over there my specialty was operations research. So the discipline of decision making, using optimization, AI, machine learning for everything that deals with data. And I quickly onboarded with the generative AI movement because I see the opportunity of solving problems faster than ever. But also I see the challenge of how do we take this technology to enable more people to solve faster than ever. So I created a new course at the University of Washington called Generative AI in the Era of Cloud Computing. And so I also try to transform the whole curriculum. So I'm now in the AI task force of the Foster School of Business. We are trying to see how we can empower educators to use those new tools such that they spend less time on very tedious tasks, but more time on the creative side. And for the students, it's an opportunity like never to actually solve all the problems they wish they could solve, to help them achieve their dreams. So I try to find so many new ways of teaching all of that. And in my research side, I also love to see how we can enhance the whole pipeline of creative problem solving. So I have also a position at Harvard where my goal is to augment the early stage of innovation in particular. For instance, how do you find better ideas? How do you evaluate the huge amount of ideas that it's so easy to generate with AI right now? And the goal overall is, can we accelerate the United Nations goals? Can we solve hunger, poverty with all those tools? Can we have more education for everyone? And so I want to teach this, encourage the students to think about it, and also include more people in the community.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kelly. So Kelly is at Google, and she's involved in corporate learning, but I'll let you share more.
Okay. Well, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Thompson. I work at Google Cloud Learning Services, and yeah, we do work a lot in corporate learning. However, I have a background in education. I actually was an elementary school teacher many, many moons ago, and then got into technology in 2000. And so I've been leading this and working with really smart people. I started in Europe and throughout Asia. I worked there as well. And then when I moved back to the States, I started working also for AWS and then moved over to Google. One of the key things that I do is work with folks that have PhDs and are big into development, you know, and then of course, as you mentioned, Leo, with the big launch of generative AI, it was really understanding how we can actually teach all different types of learners across the board. So my spectrum of my audience has changed a lot in the last 2 years at Google. Before we really were focusing on developers, and now we're really opening up to businesses, and not only just corporate learning. My team is in charge of the machine learning AI training for Google Cloud. And we were even approached by partners and internal teams at Google to say, hey, how can you help us really educate the rest of the ecosystem? So thank you.
Wow, thank you. So obviously very impressive backgrounds each of you have. There are a couple of microphones. We'll make sure enough people have them, but if you have questions, we're going to try to have a few questions amongst ourselves, but then we'll have at the end Q&A. And by the way, they're equally impressive people in the audience, so we'll be careful how we answer or how we talk. I guess to start off with, you know, maybe every domain has this question, right? Which is exciting things are going to happen because of AI, Gen AI, and AI in general in every domain, right? And maybe some scary things are going to happen. So let's start with the optimistic part first, right? So AI, the intersection of AI and education and the future, you know, what is the most exciting aspect? What are the most exciting aspects in your opinion? So anyone can start.
We want to jump in? We were just talking earlier, and I think this is really an important piece from the education perspective. Is one of the things that I've been looking at, not only just with Google, but personally, is understanding learning coaches. as we build out, and Khan Academy is also a big inspiration for me. So when it asks me what I look at different, and I look at Khan Academy and how people learn. And I think that that's something we can actually really start focusing on, using the technology that's out there. The great news is that if you use Gemini or if you use ChatGPT, there's a lot of opportunities for that. Where it gets a little tricky, and Leo and I were talking about this earlier, is helping people that don't come from the technical background to really understand how to utilize this. How can they actually build those types of bots? And we'll talk about safety later. That's a whole nother topic. But this is really what excites me. This is what keeps me up at night. I look at what Gemini's doing. I look at what ChatGPT is doing, especially around coaching and learning.
To build on this, I would also add that students, they have so many dreams and fears at the same time. So even before teaching anything like AI or technology, it's really about giving them the confidence that they can do something. And this is the big shift I've seen. Like when I teach too technically, the students think, oh, it's too hard. I teach to business school students, for instance, that don't have any coding background. Yet at the end of my course, every single student is able to deploy a web app, create a website, deploy an API from Gemini, for instance, or OpenAI online and do a live demo in front of judges from the industry in just a matter of weeks or months. They had no coding background before. But to get there, I really had to instill them the confidence that they can do it. That it's not about being smarter, more intelligent, but that being more enthusiastic, wanting to do something, trial and error, asking around, going online, figuring out through documentations, through those tools that you're developing, for instance, that there is so much available. But for this, it's about your energy and motivation again. So AI is an enabler as long as you also have those qualities of wanting to solve things for yourself. So this is really what I emphasize in the course is I will teach you, in a way, the life philosophy, the philosophy that will enable you to solve hard problems. And then GenAI is here to help you. And let me show you examples of how it can help you.
Those are really great points. In terms of my own background, because although I'm in higher ed, I spend a lot of my time and energy working with teachers and students in the K-12 settings. So that is the segment I know the most. Because when you talk about like what are the opportunities in education, you can slice the tech market into the education level, right? You can also slice the pie by who are your users, right? Is parents, is students, is K-12 teachers, is admin, or is who else? Who are the users? You can slice that pie. You can slice the pie in many other ways in terms of like what is the AI product, sort of how the whole sort of ecosystem, starting from like AI model training, right? Specialized AI model training, to like you build wrappers on top of a foundational model, to like you get specialized data, because nowadays data is the new oil. Whoever gets the most rigorous, most high quality labeled data for that given industry probably hold a lot of value to that sector, right? So you can slice the pie in different ways. You can find opportunity really in many areas. For the ones that I see in terms of the bigger picture in K-12 education, because I'm starting being a preschool teacher in my 20s to now, I just see like 20 years ago, we were talking about, we wanted to fundamentally transform classroom. And no longer like every students need to have their personalized learning opportunities, right? We talk about that over 20 years. But now is really, I can see the possibility of potentially realize that, because now no longer to be two actors in the classroom, teachers and students, which are the traditional two actors, right? They interact with each other in the classroom, because curriculum is standardized curriculum that apply to all the kids in the classroom. And so, but with generative AI, potentially you may have 3 agents, 3 actors in the classroom. You have students, you have teacher, you have AI, and at the same time dynamically interact with the students, dynamically interact with teachers. Teachers' role are going to be fundamentally changed, right? This is where I can actually see the possibility of every student to have their own individualized curriculum, their own tutor, teaching aid in the classroom, and but it's take time to make that happen. Somehow I just feel like a K-12 education at least need more innovation, need more investment to make the technology actually happen. But there is a huge desire from the parent, from student, from teachers even, right? So I see like, if we all can sort of pitch in and create new technology in this space, have a new idea, that will be what I envision in the future, right? We have these 3 agents, each of the kids actually indeed be able to have their personalized learning curriculum and learning opportunity created, dynamically created just for them in that moment.
Excellent. So looks like a lot of interesting opportunities and potentially exciting future outcomes. I have a question for Kelly, a slightly follow-up question based on what you were saying, that you're excited about coaching and you might have mentioned something else. Is it about at speed? Do you think the coaches can learn the scalability of the coaches, or are they going to be able to teach entirely new subjects? So can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at specifically, and I've been talking to a couple of my friends in the education space, but what we look at is that our products constantly change, right? We were just talking about this, and the thing is, we need to make sure that our content is up to date. And with product changes, what we do today, and kind of aligning with Leo mentioned, this, or I think it was like about adaptive learning, we can actually build agents that would know product releases as soon as they get out. Today, we have this human interaction. So imagine, at most companies, we get a product, but we're not even allowed to launch that to the public. So we want it to be that agent or your coach would say, oh my gosh, Google just launched this new product today. Have you tried this out? Let's dive deeper and go into it. So when we build learning assets, and I know somebody here in the audience who's helped us build learning assets, we build not only online classes, ILTs, but also hands-on labs. So in that case, that's what they're going to direct them to. And then by asking a series of questions, my goal would be that knowing how you like to learn. Maybe you like to read documentation. Then that agent would take you to documentation. Or if you're like, hey, I want to dive into and learn how to solve this problem for my work business. Today, and it's something, I've been in education for a long time. I'm super excited about using AI because right now I feel like it's two-dimensional, how we build training. So we just get completion rates and CSAT scores, but what we really want to do is understand what our learners have actually accomplished. Have they accomplished their goals? And by that, they've used our products to learn from that. And just to add on, sorry, one thing what Leo said, I love it. It's also keeping people curious. I think that's the one thing, even though we have all this great technology, we need to make sure that, learners will learn if they're curious.
Got it. So it sounds like you envision offering or making the students more aware or aware of more things that they might be excited about to learn, right? And then also making them more efficient at learning those things, right? Okay. Go ahead.
I would add something that we need to give this enthusiasm about it, about the technology. That we can be optimistic, we can solve those, but we don't want to replace you as humans. Like, we still need you really much. We need to collaborate with this technology. We need to find new use cases for a human-AI collaboration. And that's not obvious to anyone what's the right way of doing it.
So I guess I have maybe a fundamental question while we were talking, and maybe I should have asked this earlier. What does it mean to learn or to have learned something?
I think that's different for everybody. I would say that, it kind of depends on, well, from a corporation, we have certain learning objectives that we want to have from a business. We also have different, as a manager of a team, I have different learning goals for my team. But really, what do my team need to learn, right? So I think that it's, to your point, that's why I do feel like AI can help us, because it can actually personalize that journey. And that's, yeah.
Okay. I'll come back to you in just a second, but one of the things Leo mentioned earlier, which I think most of us probably would agree, that being inspired is part of learning, or a good teacher will be somebody who will have inspired you, right? And so, at the beginning, Leo, you were mentioning that your one of your objectives is to inspire the students to achieve things that they would not have envisioned at the beginning of those few weeks or few months of whatever class it is. And so if you include being inspired as part of the definition of learning, right, will that be substituted by AI? Will you always need humans to inspire other humans or students?
That's a tricky question because I would say it depends what resources you have available. Imagine you are in a low and middle income country, you don't even have a teacher. So it's already a very good beginning that now you can have an AI, like in those demos of ChatGPT with the sound, that you can actually have someone interacting with you. If you have a camera, that's enough. A camera, a computer, internet connection, that's it. You can have a private tutor. In a way, I'm seeing things in a relative manner. If you don't have any education system or any opportunity, now you have someone who can help you go beyond. Let's say now you have access, you are at University of Washington, or you are at the public school around. I would say I would not want to get rid of the human element at all, because this is what makes us human. The AI can teach you a lot, you can learn a lot, but it's really this community aspect, the fact that we are all human, we have emotions, we are able to connect and relate, that we are able to live all together, and then this is where I think we build our dreams as part of the society. So I would not want to get rid of it. I would want to see an evolution to fit the fact that this technology is there and we cannot deny it.
Got it. I mean, go ahead.
No,
Give us your definition of learning as well.
That is a very interesting question because there is some technical definition we use as learning scientists or learning engineers thinking about learning. Learning basically is master new information. That's how we've been utilizing this. And at the same time, once you master new information, the next day is how you apply it to solve real world problem, right? So we actually have like depths of knowledge or depths of learning. We defined for students, the very basic level will be memorizing the knowledge, right? Memorizing the concept. To a later stage, you can understand, you can explain it. To a more advanced stage of learning, which is you apply it, you solve the problem, you have a critical thinking, right? Creativity, you create new knowledge out of it. So there are different phases when we think about from a learning engineer, from a learning perspective, thinking about this. And nowadays with generative AI, we're trying to think about like the first 2 or 3 stages of memorizing, just acquire the knowledge. And I'm not sure will be so much important in the future with generative AI, because you can utilize AI to create a literature review very quickly. You can even triangulate, validate the source, the rigor of the source, many other things, right? You can memorize. You don't have to do a lot of memorization activity anymore, but a lot of this is you still need to do the interpretation, application, creativity, the applying later stage of learning too, right? How do you create a technology that's scaffolding humans' learning of more advanced skills, as we just described? And so that is a thing we have been exploring, thinking about. How do we create technology that kids nowadays in K-12 setting can do more of the explaining, right? To do more of applying to problem solving, to do more of creating new things.
Got it. Okay. I guess a lot of interesting points you're touching on. A bit ago, I mentioned that we're going to come back to, not just what's exciting, but what's also potentially scary, or how do we create the right guardrails, right? And so there's a lot of things here, right? From privacy to probably I don't know how AI should think about age appropriateness when it's teaching kids or students, right? So thoughts or any practices?
Yeah, I think I can start it because we work with young kids and teachers who work with young kids. Nowadays, at least for us, we start to offer just to teachers to begin with to learn about the use cases teachers use in their classroom. We're currently developing a student-facing version, but we're doing like lots of testing, co-developing even with the kids together, like 14 years and older. We co-design the platform with them. I feel like by offering it to teachers, we learned so much about what teachers need in order to work with their students to develop the advanced learning skill we just talked about. And so that is like we spent over a year of working with teachers to co-design, learn about how they use technology. For example, like for a writing teacher, right? And teachers say like the assignment or the instruction is to ask the students to work with the AI to write a 5-paragraph, right, about a robot. And if you put it into ChatGPT, it probably go ahead and write this 5-paragraph for the students, for 5-paragraph essay. But that's not what the teacher want, right? The teacher want a scaffolding tool that is a learning tool rather than help students complete a homework tool, right? So that is something that to do that, you really need to build in the learning theory in your technology design. You need to possibly build another layer on top of the general purpose foundational models, or even train a smaller model to just accomplish that, to embed it like a learning theory, embedded teaching, best teaching practices into your models in order to serve that goal before you offer to kids. So that is one, to make it useful to kids learning, that and create like a really fruitful opportunities, like a learning opportunity for kids. That is one thing we learned. The other thing we learned is, of course, guardrail, because kids are, if you give the technology to them, we quickly learn that there are a lot of things can happen. Even nowadays, we just give it to teachers. We human engineers and researchers, we are in the back end constantly monitoring, like the explicit prompts sometimes the teacher put in, we feel like not appropriate, we need to direct that. And we need to teach the AI to be able to set the guardrail in a way that basically apologizes, say like that not type of a question that I can assist you with. Because there are a lot of, like even us, we're human learning about how to prompt, right? And so we have to guide the learning, the adult learning first in this process. So we set up a lot of guardrails in the system to be able to, like, well, as a human as well, in the loop, constant monitoring what teachers talking to the chatbot or utilize the AI, what AI's response to that, and quickly react to plug some holes and redirect users. That is another sort of a technology guardrail. The third guardrail is work with school districts to develop a policy. They need to have a guideline and regulate both teachers and students' behavior first before we can deploy and sort of work with the district to apply, implement it to everyone in the district, because we need to do training. We need to help the district first set up the policy, and then we sign MOU agreement with them, and then work with them together to train their teachers in terms of like, here's the way you detect the bias errors in the AI response. Here is how you address that. We're not afraid of like having potential bias and error, but human, you need to be able to spot that, and you need to fix that, right? There are ways in which you can do that even as an end user. So we teach them how to do that as well, to cultivate their capacity, and then we co-design with their students, with their teachers as pairs to figure out how do we offer the technology to the students who are 14 years and older. That's kind of our experiences so far.
I see.
On this, and I want to build on this, like I'm afraid of over-delegation at every stage. If the students spend too much time asking the AI to do the homework for them, they won't get the learning and the impregnation in their brain. And it's been already shown with research in the K-12 field, like a recent research by Wharton, that students, if they do the homework with the AI as a scaffold mechanism, something that checks their answer, can give feedback, that's a good usage of AI. If you use AI where you just plug and play your assignment and AI gives you the answer, you won't learn much, if anything. So that's one thing. Who has used ChatGPT 01, the latest version that was came out like last week? How many of you? Very few. I want all of you to try it tonight or in a few days. That's a homework for you. Try 01 to see how it works. Try it with tasks that you're doing right now that are boring. I want you to try it. If you are in AI, you have to see how the latest tools are. So that's one thing, if there are limitations. Many people consider the stage of AI as the tool they maybe used 2 months or 3 months ago. It keeps moving in so many different ways. So keep trying and playing with those tools. So that I also always want my students to do this. One concerning thing with 01 from ChatGPT is the fact that it's apparently thinking. It's not really thinking, it's processing, but they make you believe it's thinking. And then you don't know what's happening in the back end. Sometimes the model is thinking for 60 seconds or a minute or two. And you have no idea what's happening. It just gives you the answer in the end. More and more of the AI systems are trying to automate as many things as possible, but you have no way of knowing what happened in the middle. We call this a black box model. Sometimes you're wondering, what can I do as a human? How do I even enter the loop? So I'm worried that too many things get automated and we sometimes lose control. So it's in the design of those systems and also our responsibility when using those tools to be aware of what's the technology behind, what kind of mistakes can happen, and are the proper guardrails implemented, like the ones you mentioned?
I'll take it a little bit of a different approach that, one of the key things, and I'll put this date myself, I used to work on on-prem infrastructure. So some of you may know
That wasn't
work.
so long ago.
Yeah, I know, right? And so, one of the things that is really important, no matter what company you work for, is really to make sure that your infrastructure has the guardrails behind the scenes. And I think that that's something that we forget about in the space, that we're like, oh yeah, we're going to start a company, we're going to start using generative AI. But, it is really the behind the scenes infrastructure piece. Luckily, it's not as difficult as they were back in the day when I did work in a data center at KPGM. But, there are those things, and I think that's something just to think about too.
Okay. We probably have too many questions I'm thinking of, so I'm going to try to keep it short, but I want to get a couple of what I think are exciting questions out of the way, and then we'll have the microphones go around. This is a surprise question, so maybe you'll give us a good answer, or maybe you'll have to come back later. We had an event a few months ago where we were talking about healthcare and the effects of AI on healthcare, right? And I got to be the moderator, and I'm not an expert in healthcare, so I asked my one question, which is like, is AI going to make me happier? And is it going to help me live longer? Right? That was my question for healthcare experts, right? And we talked about that a little bit. So if I think of learning and education at that kind of super high level, right now we force all the kids to roughly 16 years of formal education. Will that go down to 12? When AI and everything everybody's working on is fully in gear? Pradeep says no. And so we'll come back to you. So that's, in a way, that's probably the highest level questions I could think of, right? Or I don't know how we measure this, but will we all be collectively smarter, right? So any kind of really broad thoughts or,
On happiness, I don't think AI will make us happier. I think it's a really human philosophical thing. It's part of the world, and we have to deal with AI and build our happiness knowing there is AI. So for some people, that makes no difference at all. Some people, their life is no different since ChatGPT came out. For some people, it's a big deal. So I would say that's this good old question that even the ancient Greeks were asking, like, how are we happy? I don't think AI would change anything. I think that's a new tool that can help some people specifically. An example could be, you could interact with the AI, and I know a lot of startups are doing this. You have a companion, especially, for instance, for the elderly, who are lonely. You can have an AI potentially AI, AR, VR, and I know some people in this room are working in AR, VR. That's an example where technology can enable happiness, but not bring happiness necessarily. That's for the point of happiness.
Kelly, what do you think?
That's a tough question. I think that there's some things that can't, like if you think of like the happiest people in the world, they're in Copenhagen, right, was the study, because they have free education, they have healthcare, they have more time with their family. So I think there could be a part with AI that gets rid of some of the mundane tasks, and with the healthcare industry, that could bring society where we live in the States, such an uneven society compared to a lot of the European countries. Pardon? So, I think that that's something that I think there could be, to your point, I agree with Leo, it's not going to change everything, but it could bring some of those things to more of an equal playing ground.
I will talk to your second point about shorten the learning time or not. My personal point of view is actually not shorten the learning time. It's actually going to make your learning so much faster, the rapid pace you have to upgrade your knowledge. It also make you learn faster and do work faster. And so I would say it actually make you need to learn longer period of time, and because you need to upgrade your skill, you need to skill up in the rapid pace to be stay sort of competitive in this AI era. That's how, at least how I experience and feel about.
Got it. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I guess some of probably that question that I asked earlier is unanswerable easily, right? Will we be shrinking the number of years we force our kids to study, and will we be happier, and will we be smarter? I want to switch to a little bit more mundane line of discussion, if you will. So how many people are in EdTech startups or EdTech in general? There's a handful. Okay. So K through 12, what are you guys selling, K through 12? And what are you doing, Sophia? Corporate, okay. Well, I guess let's ask a K through 12 question. So you have a platform, right? Colleague, which is mostly K through 12 in the States, right? And so EdTech is known as a very difficult vertical to try to get clients, right? It's like one of the hardest, right? Maybe healthcare is up there and a few others. So one of the things I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that it's not enough to just put great technology or great platform out there, right? There's a lot of services and a lot of training that you have to do with the teachers and staff and so on. So what are the obstacles or constraints you've run into, maybe that's one of them, as you try to drive adoption of this platform that should be really helping the teachers and the students, right? And maybe even the parents?
Yeah, I think I see many of you probably more veterans in the tech than myself. We just started. The company, we spin it off from UW as a company starting September last year, actually officially, because there is a process of negotiating between a private company and a big university. So we finalized it in May this year. So we're just at the very beginning of the process. We currently have 6 or 7 school districts utilizing the platform, and we also have individual users across the nation. And we are funded primarily at this moment by sort of federal agency, U.S. Department of Education and National Science Foundation. So, I mean, we didn't actively go to private investment, so I don't know about that world, but I heard it's quite competitive in terms of tech compared to other sort of AI application, compared to healthcare, finance, climate change even, right? And how appealing tech to investors, and how much investors recognize actually tech is a relatively big market out there, right? So many investors I talk with them casually, not in a formal sort of trying to get their money kind of way, learned that I think they need some education as well in terms of how big the edtech market is. So that is one, I think, for those of you who are in this industry more than I do and raise funding from private investment can talk more about the investment barrier and difficulty. Then after that, I think technology development, and we go to, just because of my personal background, we go to a federal agency because we can really do solid on the scientific aspect, the technology innovation, so we can go through the scientific review panel in order to get the federal investment, because I think education should be a collective investment between the federal government agency and nonprofit and for-profit, like a private investment all together, because it's generated tremendous social goods, right? And we also take on a huge amount of social responsibility by developing this technology. So I feel like it should be like a collaboration between like public and private sector. And so the technology development investment, that is one aspect. Then as Harash, when you mentioned about the implementation adoption, once you have a technology, I feel like my personal experience so far is that's just the beginning of the story. You have to work with the district. It's a long process, right? Even if you have individual users, teacher can start to utilize this. But as soon as they start to go to schools, right, utilize a school device or in school buildings, you have to go through the district approval in order to allow teachers to utilize the technology. So you have to partner and develop a relationship with the school district. Then that will be a relatively longer process of working with the school districts and get their interest in this. And you need to show initial evidence, because they're using for public schools, most of us probably sell to public schools. They're using taxpayers' dollars. They have to document whatever technology they adopt actually ultimately have the potential to generate a positive impact in the classroom and students' learning outcome. So this documentation process, right, you need to accumulate enough evidence in order to sell to the school district. Then after that, you have to work with them to support their teachers adopted. The teachers are so busy, right? They're constantly learning new concept, new technology, new tools. What I learned, a given school district can have over 100 or 200 technology they adopted, right? Teachers are learning each one of them and trying to figure out which one can really help me to accomplish this one task. So like to be able to help the teachers learn about why your technology, how to use it in the most proper way, how to make teachers feel that they benefit out of the technology you offer to them. That is something we have been puzzling, learning about.
Okay, so it looks like you're at the beginning of the journey, but there are multiple obstacles. I guess I'll be curious, as you over time, as you accumulate data and you think there's a clear business case, I'm sure you'll still run into resistance and what that looks like, right? And because education is highly political, right? Unions, teachers' unions, and then school boards, and of course parents and students, everybody has an opinion. We tried really hard, by the way, to get somebody from the Gates Foundation, but the schedules didn't match up. They have some strong opinions about what's happening in the education domain, right? I think, Kelly, did you have a point earlier where you, I mean, the question I had asked Min, because she is leading the charge on colleague AI, was around adoption, right? And how do you get adoption? So I guess maybe the same question to both of you, but in a slightly different way, because it's within the audiences you're targeting, right? What are the constraints you run into when you're like, okay, let's leverage more of AI, or let's leverage these platforms more, but it's not being leveraged at the pace or at the scale that it could be? What are the obstacles or constraints you're seeing?
Okay. I think, well, like I mentioned earlier, our target audience has completely changed what we were focusing on. And what we're seeing at a lot of the technology companies is that we are also making sure that even the generalists who are coming to learn the technology also understand safety and responsible. especially AI. We haven't talked much about that today, and I think that's something that does keep me up at night to make sure that
Say more.
yeah. So, we've opened up all these great opportunities for anybody to pretty much go in and start building. And I think, one of the things that we focus on very much so at Google is responsible AI. And that's also why, in the news, people are like, oh, is Google going to come out with something? We just wanted to be really responsible about it. I mean, that's our biggest thing. And that's something that I'm really proud of. But it's also more on the safety too. We've got all these great ideas, but then you also have to be really mindful. I think the biggest thing that keeps me up at night is, and I don't know why I'm going to quote it this way, but you'll hear me say it, like fake news, right? I think is my biggest concern across what's happening in the globe, and it doesn't even matter what party you're for or anything like that. That's what scares me the most. And we've got to come up with ways as people that are in our space who love this and are excited about it, no matter education for youth or education for adults. Like really, we need to think about those things and how do we continue as a society. And I think that's the biggest thing that's top of mind. Yeah.
I see. Got it.
And I would add on this, on the optimistic side this time, that there are so many use cases that needs to be unlocked. Most people take AI as a chatbot or like ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT became a synonym of AI for many people. It's so much more than that. There is more than generative AI, and many people just see Gen AI as AI. There is so much more. Sometimes Gen AI is not the solution to the problem. A traditional AI model, if not an algorithm that has been developed for decades, might work. So I would say that we need to teach this new building mindset, that we can all become sort of engineers. You can stack multiple AI models together. Just as a curiosity, who has used image generators in this room, like Midjourney, DALL-E, etc.? Not all of you, many of you. That's cool. That's another kind of AI where you talk to the AI and you get an image. That's already a different mechanism. It's multimodality, the ability to have reasoning with text, images, potentially time series. This is so rich in healthcare, for instance. We were talking about healthcare. You can understand so many more types of data. You can really help doctors assess patients faster and in a more holistic manner because now AI can understand all those databases together. You have so many other use cases. So I think we should encourage people to actually look into those APIs, build your own chatbot, for instance, instead of just using the one off the shelf. How do you build a retrieval system? For instance, if you plug a few PDFs, how can you have an AI that can chat with those PDFs? How can you build a more trustworthy system? Because the AI won't hallucinate answers, but will actually back its answer with a specific piece of information from a website. So maybe some of you know Perplexity.ai. They call it the baby of Google and ChatGPT. So they try, for instance, to have more capacity to link the sources. So here the takeaway from this is we should encourage people to build more, go beyond just chatbots and stack things, plug and play, and just put the hands in the dirt, which what you're building, for instance, helps. Same as Colleague AI.
Got it. Well, thank you. Go ahead.
Can I add to that? And just to sort of add to more what you just mentioned about the adoption process, right? I'm not sure if this is applied to other industry as well. In education, what I observe by working with teachers, we see this emotional roller coaster in terms of the end user. So it begins with some of the teachers super excited about what AI can do for them. Some other teachers basically sort of say like, this is a new thing, another new thing. And they also heard from this public media sort of say like AI is inherent biased. It will perpetuate bias and it's not good for our kids' learning. It will make our kids dumber as well over time because they don't have to do the reasoning themselves anymore. They don't have to do the work themselves anymore. So at some point, K-12, some of the larger school districts actually ban generative AI, and teachers even then in their classrooms, and because they couldn't figure out how do we even grade the students' work, which part is cheating, which part is not, right? So at the beginning you have to to address those different emotions, different opinions they bring in the technology without even seeing your tool yet, right? And they haven't really looked at the technology you built yet, and they start to have a perception about it. And you have to address them head on almost, right, to figure out a way of doing that. Once you start to have teachers start to utilizing them, right, they start to recognize, oh gosh, this has really saved my time. They help me do A, help me do B. And you have to really calm them down and say, you really need to think about the best practice of using AI. Protect your own privacy, protect your students' privacy. You also need to think about how you really develop your own as well as your students' agency, human creativity, the higher order thinking we want them to utilize AI to develop and learn about. So, which is another sort of like a capacity building piece. I think this is to some degree, part of me also feel like this is beyond a tech developer able to do, unless it's Google or Microsoft who have different divisions can offer all these services. We feel like it needs other entrepreneurs to figure out how do we actually develop training programs for end users, right, to be able to address different stage of their use of AI. So that is just another sort of both a barrier as well as an opportunity.
Great. So looks like a lot of parameters and considerations, both in terms of, just to summarize, in terms of the opportunities that exist and also the constraints and safety issues that'll come up. They're happening, I guess, real time now. But this has been going on a little bit longer than we had scheduled. So we want to open it up to all of you. And looks like Jolene has a question. But just before we do, any parting thoughts or summary?
I think that
Short and sweet, by the way.
Yeah, it is our responsibility to make the honeymoon with Gen AI a happy marriage. And it's by working all together, by building on our human connections, our creativity, by inspiring every generation to do more, that we'll end up with a better world. Right.
Excellent. Kelly, go ahead.
Closing thoughts. It's it's just such an opportunity to be here and meeting with all different people. I think the big thing is what I look at is how can we as the tech companies support society and other learners across the board.
Excellent.
I would say that is a huge once a lifetime opportunity as well as a challenge. It more investment, need more talent. It also need more use cases to be developed.
All right. So lots of work, I guess. And researchers, of course, need more funding. Right? Yeah. So I think Pradeep had a suggestion or a question. So Pradeep, many of you know him, but he's part of Pratham. Can you tell us one sentence about Pratham?
So what I do from an active interest point of view these days is raise money for an organization which does foundational literacy and numeracy kind of planet-wide. We address about 8 to 10 million kids every year. And we attempt very hard to break the tyranny of the classroom. I use that word very deliberately, or that expression. So just a couple of observations. Thank you very much. And I really did like, Leo, your emphasis on motivation. In some senses, as being a grandpa who's got a 1-year-old and 3-year-old, I'm actually stunned to see what we do to our children. I mean, this is really curious kids, both of them. I just got to keep them out of things. Their level of interest in learning how to walk, how to climb stairs, how to poke their fingers into things, how does this work? It's a zillion questions. By the time they get to 18, we have sullen, poor learners who we've beaten down for 18 years. And we talk about the motivation and the pressure, things that we can do to stimulate the corporate learners who come by, or even in K-12. We're focusing on those who come in with 18 years of support and morale and feeling good about themselves and foundational learning, and they know enough and they're confident and they want to learn. And we forget about, that's the reason why this country is divided in this very split way. We leave a lot of people behind. We leave most people behind. And that's why we don't like the elite schools. That's kind of the structural problem. This industry does not adopt EdTech. The problem with EdTech is not because the investors don't think there's a market. It's because they've seen them fail year after year. The list of failures start with Plato, IBM 1960. And it's now 75 years later, and every industry that you look at is now automated, except for this damn one. Everything else has changed. This is the one lousy industry which doesn't adopt change. Partly it's the curriculum, partly it's institutional change, resistance and all that. It's just partly also the damn classroom the Austrians invented. All of that has added up. It's put the kids in rows and columns, don't think about what levels they are, what their interests are, don't personalize anything, all that. So this is my rant. Now that I'm done with my rant, the question really is, I've got a 5, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, that's the age group I'm interested in. And it's hard for them to read stuff. I haven't taught them how to read yet. And I haven't taught them to get to understand. The machine can't motivate them. They're interested. After a while, those pictures are interesting. The videos do get interesting, but they become yesterday's game. Whereas if I put 5 of them around a room, or on a table, or even on the floor, which is what we do in Pratham, and I give you a chalk, and I give you, Monopoly money, and I say, one of you is a shopkeeper in the UK, you buy tomatoes and you buy potatoes, and here's your shopping list, and tell me what the change looks like. It's the most exciting math problem they've ever heard. They'll tell each other they're stupid, and you didn't do the math right, and hello, and, it's a fun game. So collaborative learning for me has been a very rewarding thing, as I watch it actually out there. Whereas the one-to-one relationship with the machine has been, it's hard to compel. It's why EdTech fails. Again, that wasn't a question. It was a set of opinions. What I'm trying to formulate really out is how to solve this problem. It's really hard to do at scale with humans.
One little answer is the gamified aspect. Like you said it, like why do they like to be there with the chalk and playing? Because it's fun. And very often, playing with any tool or technology is a burden, or it's boring. And sometimes we sit in this classroom for hours listening to things we don't even understand why they're useful. There is no purpose. So we need to bring the motivation back, the human aspect back, the game back. How can we make any interaction a game? How can you transform this concept you just learned into something that can activate a new power? How now you can solve this new level because now you unleashed a new skill for you. And how can you build your next toy? And this toy can be an algorithm, for instance. So I would really come back to the us being children. This is why we learn so much. This is why we ask so many questions. Because we have no barriers. We have no one who told us you're bad, it's not the right way of doing it. We're just free. And so I would come back to instilling this spirit of freedom, of happiness, of ingenuity, of creativity. And you're just playing. You're learning and you're playing.
My question to you is, how do you do that at scale? You can do that with 5 really smart teachers you get around. What do you do when you have 220 million kids in school right now, kind of planet-wide? That's a lot of teachers. It's really hard to change that much behavior.
You mentioned it. I think the countries in the Northern Europe, they emphasize happiness much more, playing much more. They only go to school 4 days a week now, for instance. I think that's a system that works also because those are for sure rich countries with a lot of resources and a lot of equality. But I would say they emphasize other values than the ones we emphasize sometimes at school here. So I would say emphasizing new values, encouraging kids to help each other. And I think you mentioned collaborative learning, instilling this policy and this thinking of we have to collaborate to go further. And that comes from what the teacher will say, the parents will say. So it's a huge, massive endeavor. And then at my scale, I do it, for instance, I have a couple hundred students. So I do it at that scale, and it works very well. And I try to encourage colleagues to do it. Or I try to put online courses that are fun, like little games. So I would say that it's a collective effort of all of us. You asking this question, triggering us to think, is this stone we keep rolling and then making us happier and potentially help the system go better.
Just very quickly, two thoughts. One is you may, if you draw on the previous generation of education technology to imply AI-enabled, like truly AI-enabled technology as I was envisioning, because a lot of previous generation of technology, even early stage of AI-enabled technology, we call it, they're just trying to augment how we learn. They're not transforming how we learn. And I feel like to enable what you were talking about, collaborative learning, to allow kids really enjoying their learning process, connect with the kids more, you have to fundamentally transform the dynamic in the classroom, not just augmenting what is already existing in the classroom for decades. Now we create a lot of technology is just augmenting what is going on already, traditionally being there decades already, right? So that is one thing, like how do we build like effective product features that incorporate how human naturally learn and enjoying about learning into their product features, into their models. And that I think is definitely a worthwhile question for us collectively explore. That is my first sort of point. The other point I would say, like what you just described at the very beginning, is just to need to involve everybody in the process. It's not just the tech developers, right? It's not just the investors. And it just needs to involve all, because I do agree with you. One point is particular K-12 education system is relatively slower to be transformed by technology because there are so many other factors in play, as you just described.
Thank you. Thank you, Pradeep. Don't forget your umbrella if you're about to leave. But by the way, we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to, a couple of people had questions, so we'll take two more. I think David had one, right? You have? Oh, you don't have one. Okay. So Jolene has one. But just before, logistically, if anybody has to leave, take an umbrella. We've got enough umbrellas over there for everybody. It should be raining outside, but it's not today. But we thought it might be raining and you might need one. All right. It's good to see Pradeep. Thank you. So Jolene, go ahead. And by the way, we have this room for a little bit after this. So we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes. And then, so you're welcome to, make contact with anybody who's talked something interesting. And also there's a little bit of food, there's more drinks. So we're not in a rush to get kicked out or anything like that, but I know people have to get home for many, many reasons. So we'll take a couple more questions. So Jolene, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for your contributions this evening. We've spent a lot of time talking about what AI can help us learn. I'm interested in what AI can help us unlearn when it comes to racism, when it comes to misogyny, bigotry, those types of things. So what, in your line of work, what do you see, what tools are currently available to help with that? And then also, what would that look like? If you all could design something, what would that look like to help? And I'm mainly thinking of adults. I think someone brought up just fake news and the things that are currently just running rapid. So it's great that AI is here to help us build things, but I'm not interested in a world that repeats some of the problems that we have now. So
I can answer a part of that. I think the first step is that still there's only 14% women in tech. That's my, and as we're training models at companies, doesn't matter where you are, that is normally coming from male colleagues. But I do think that that's part of the responsible part. I think is really important. And one thing that I really love about Google is we think about that, right? It's really about the unconscious bias and, really trying to work with the governments and the agencies for any type of discrimination. We can't control everything, and that's what I think that's the big part about that safety I mentioned earlier and the responsible, no matter where you're going in, we all have that, like you were mentioning that, Leo, no matter how we're responding to these prompts, those things are going in and it's learning that. So it is important. And we know, where most of us were around when the internet was launched, there was a scary time too, right? Everyone was freaking out. And so, but I do think that is the key thing, is to get more diversity into who's building the prompts. And so one of my big initiatives, and also at my company, is really getting more women in tech to support that.
Very quickly to respond to your, because myself is more in the stage of developing AI technology, so I can speak from that perspective. One way we are doing is to, like, from the very beginning of, because like what is the input going to determine very much what is the output, right? So in terms of input data, when we label the data, we would really need very diverse, like expert teachers, labelers to label like all the data for us, so that we can fine-tune the model, build the model in a way that represent diverse perspective. So that is one way. And second is once we build it, instructional fine-tune the initial model, or develop our own models and algorithm. The next stage is we have to validate it, have to use like a human feedback and reinforcement learning to continue to develop the model, right? And refine the features. And there you also need to know like who are the human sort of feedback providers, right? Because their input can also reinforce what the machine is going to learn. The next stage is once you build all the technology, put it in front of users, then how do you teach the users to detect, as I said very early on, utilize the information in a sort of a human responsible way, as Kelly mentioned as well, right? That will be the last guardrail, and because the human ultimately take responsibility, and also they are the ones who take ultimate action utilizing the information AI provide. So that will be another, like in terms of training, further develop a user's capacity will be the next last phase where we are sort of pay attention to address the potential bias. And the other thing is, luckily, like in education, after the past few years, right, in terms of pedagogy, we just accumulate so much sort of like a culture responsive learning. There are many sort of a framework out there, right? We can possibly, we sort of enable teachers to think about how they can actually really implement some of these things in their classroom if their state and if their parents and their students sort of diverse and request such kind of pedagogy, right, to be effective. So all this to say that it's just a multi-layer, multi-stage kind of a way in which you can potentially to sort of instruct the AI to be less biased.
All right. I think one more, and then we'll call it good.
Hi, I'm Deepak Seth. A quick question about, background, I have a son that has special needs, and one of the challenges going through the school districts, going through IEPs and going through negotiating with school districts on how to support our child. And so there's many, many thousands of children that have learning disabilities. What do you foresee applying the technologies we have within AI and machine learning to helping augment the ability for teachers, empowering them to free up more time so they can provide a better both one-on-one or multi one-to-many instruction in ways that accommodate different learning styles. For instance, my son is a visual learner. He requires tactile visual feedback as he learns. Abstract topics are very hard for him, like algebra. So I just wonder what your thoughts about that and where do you see that going?
Yeah, I can respond to that first, and you all feel free to respond to that question as well, because the reason I'm so passionate wanted to speak to you about it, because for colleague AI, what we notice, the most requested topic is from teachers is like, how do we support students with special education needs, language needs, disability, students at different academic levels, right? And how do we support, like, respect, like, the assets students bring in terms of cultural background, all sort of like, so that the learning material can better connect with the kids, and kids feel like their learning is meaningful to them, right? Which is, we talk about the motivation piece. So So that is the most requested topic on our platform. And we do see AI can do multiple things for teachers. One is by providing the technology, right? And in terms of language, it can translate into whatever language, and kids can speak to instead of write, type, right? Because we have some of the teachers say like, my students only be able to speak in English or speak in their own sort of a home language to the AI tool. But I want the AI to respond in English so that the kids can learn, or I want the AI to respond in their speaking language, whatever language they speak to the AI tool, right? To explain this mathematical concept to them so they learn the knowledge without being bothered by the type of language they speak, right? So that is, and visual disability, or like a visual learner, and some of the students have a visual disability, and so how do students support them, how do teachers support this type of students? So by like generating image, or like we saw a teacher who is teaching poem, trying to teach students how to write a given poem. They actually utilize our AI tool to generate illustrations for that theme, such as like a rabbit next to a house, and they want the students to create that. They first ask AI generate an illustration of that, right? And then they give it to students in order to inspire students to write poem about it, right? So all this to say that because of the multi-model, multi-agent AI tool now, so be able to support from a technology perspective. The other more profound way, as I can see AI support teachers, is through the pedagogy in terms of how teachers actually work with students with a different type of technology, with a different type of a disability or special learning needs, because we can offer the technology to support the translation, to support all other things, but more important is the human-to-human interaction, how teachers through pedagogy, right, to be able to interact with the kids, to support them better learn. That is where AI we see nowadays start to be able to support teachers, open up their eyes, help them to think about a sentence stem, help them to think about another strategy in which they can try in their classroom, like choice station, all sort of things that AI is able to help teachers to think about to support that type of students. I think that is a much profound way of affecting how teachers work with students with special education needs.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I know we can go on, so I'm going to have to pause it for now. So we're all going to be around, all of us that have time for any follow-up questions. But big round of applause for all the panelists. And as I mentioned earlier, we have umbrellas for you also, but they're in the back corner. There are more of them, so don't be shy. David, thank you for partnering again. It's always wonderful. We'll have another event in December, topic, speakers, etc., to be announced later. But thanks to all of you for coming over and making time for this, and we'll call it a good night. See you next time.